Coming up on Big Ten Today, in-state rivalries reshape the top of the men's standings. Trent Meacham shares his take on massive weekend wins for the Spartans, Ducks, and Hoosiers. Plus, just 1 week remains in the race for the women's title. How USC and UCLA stayed on their collision course, and who else is making some noise before tourney time. Big Ten Today starts now. With that, welcome you inside this week opening edition of Big Ten Today, presented by CDW. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo. Hard to believe we are in the final week of the Big Ten women's regular season. USC, UCLA looking like locks to be the 1 and 2 seeds at next week's Big Ten tournament. But who claims the regular season title, or is it a share? We'll talk women's hoops with Ashley Adamson coming up in just a bit. But we begin on the men's side. Trent Meacham joining us. 2 weeks left in the men's regular season. Trent, there appears to be some separation toward the top, but there is a lot of jockeying those spots 3 through 7 as everybody tries to earn those coveted double byes down in Indianapolis.
It's kind of what we expected, Rick. This is a really deep conference. There's a lot of really good teams, and some of these teams that have been at the bottom, man, they're playing pretty good basketball right now. Some talented teams are at the bottom. And I equate it to, coaches talk about their 40-minute games. We saw some games this week, and it's a 40-minute games, the tale of two halves. This is a 20-game conference season. Some teams have 3 games left. There's some with 5 games left. So still some really important games to finish up the season that could change a lot here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, including tonight, you have a standalone Monday night game. Michigan trying to catch back up with Michigan State, who just beat the Wolverines over the weekend on the road to face Nebraska. That will wrap up, if you consider Monday the extension of the weekend, what has already been a busy weekend. Michigan State knocks off Michigan in Ann Arbor. That game took place on Friday night. Then Oregon with the unexpected comeback win over Wisconsin, who played a very un-Wisconsin-like late game situation. Penn State knocks off Minnesota. Iowa gets an important win over Washington. Illinois gets run by Duke. And then in the rematch, Indiana with a huge second half. To your point, Trent, about this not being a 20-minute game, but a 40-minute game. UCLA and Rutgers picked up wins on Sunday. So let's work this a little bit chronologically. Going back to Friday night, that Michigan State win over Michigan, we are seeing the emergence of Jace Richardson as not just one of the best young players in this conference, Trent, but one of the best players, period, in this conference. He, Trey Holloman, and the rest of that Michigan State backcourt were so much better than Michigan's backcourt, and I felt like that really made the difference on Friday in Ann Arbor.
Well, Rick, we didn't talk about this, but that's exactly where I was going to go. That backcourt, those 4 guys, Holloman, Richardson, Fears, Akins, 60 points in that backcourt. Even a guy like Jeremy Fears Jr., they're not guarding him. They're playing off him. His confidence hasn't seemed to waver. He's still making plays, made some critical shots. And go back to, you started with Jace Richardson, 21 points. He's 7 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, gets to the free throw line. He's been so efficient. That's what's really impressive as a young player, to do it at the level he's done it at. Now he's in the starting lineup. He wasn't for most of the season, so not playing 30 minutes, not getting 15 shots a night, but he is so efficient, such a tough shot maker. And now I've seen Trey Holloman emerge. He's had a number of really impressive games. He had those 3 threes in a row in the second half, and that's what really kind of busted open, gave Michigan State a bit of a lead there midway through the second half. He's been really good on both ends of the floor. He's making tough shots. He's also distributing the ball. Those guards, you have a good team that's been a tough team. They've kind of rediscovered their identity. They're playing a lot of guys. But especially Richardson and Holloman, those guys have stepped up as shot makers. And that's what I think has taken this Michigan State team from being good to now being a very good, possibly great team this season.
What about concerns for Michigan? You know what you're going to get most nights from Danny Wolf, from Vlad Golden. Michigan emerged toward the top of the Big Ten because Trey Donaldson started playing at a completely different level. He was completely shut off on Friday night by that Michigan State defense. Do you think this could be a script perhaps for other teams when they look at Michigan in a tournament setting and you're trying to deal with those 2 7-footers and you know they're going to get theirs? Do you just say, okay, Vlad, Danny, you do what you do. We're going to take away everything else that Michigan wants to do offensively?
Well, teams might try. Most teams aren't Michigan State in terms of their depth and what they can do defensively. I think Trey Donaldson, 3 points, 2 assists. I think he's a better player than what he showed on Friday night, but there's no doubt, Rick, they need him to play at a high level if they're going to want to win a conference championship, advance in March. And it's not easy for him because as he's their point guard, yes, but also times he finds himself off the ball with Danny Wolf playing point a lot. So he's still learning, okay, when is it his time to take the reins and take charge, knock down big shots? We've seen him do that this season. And when is he more off the ball and happen to be effective and impactful off the ball? I'd also say with Danny Wolf, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. He had a good game. I still think they could utilize him more. When they give him some space and he puts his head down, he is so tough to stop. So I just like to, I don't think he realizes how good he is. And if they can give him space, let him operate even more, I think that'd be important for them.
Of course, these teams will meet again on the final day of the regular season, that rematch to be played at the Breslin Center in Ann Arbor. Speaking of rematches, we saw one on Sunday inside Assembly Hall. Purdue got the better of Indiana inside Mackey earlier in the year. And after one half of play, it's 37-25 on Sunday. Indiana looks completely discombobulated offensively. Trent, I'm not sure what Mike Woodson said or did at halftime. I'm not sure what happened to the Purdue team that we saw in the first half because it wasn't the same team that we saw in the second half. But it all ended up with a huge, arguably the biggest win of the year for Indiana as the Hoosiers try to make a late season push here and become an NCAA tournament team.
Gosh, Rick, it was fun to see them get after it in that second half. I thought they're defensively, they're playing 94 feet. They're denying the ball. They're making Braden Smith work every bounce, every play. They're making him work to receive the ball, to get any separation on ball screens. And on those ball screens, which Purdue's been so effective, they were right there at the level of the screen. They had great help side defense on TKR. And then Purdue's other main guy, and Trey Copperin, when he got the ball in the post, they did a great job, Indiana did, in zoning up and really bringing a lot of help to Trey Copperin. So I thought defensively, schematically, they were on point. Give that coaching staff a lot of credit, but then just the emotion and the energy that they played with, it was fantastic. It's interesting, Rick. That second half, they're playing 4 guards now, and the second half it was Goody, it was Galloway, it was Leal, it was those 3 guards and Rice, Miles Rice as well. They played 20 minutes each that second half. They interchanged Balo and Renew, who were both effective. So they've gone to a little bit of a different, smaller lineup. Better shooting, space in the floor. I think the roles are more clearly defined. We see a nice feed there from Renew with 4 assists. He was effective. So they found something now, and it's schematically, it's with the roster, it's who's on the floor, but also just the fight, the energy. You love to see it. That's Indiana basketball at its best.
As for Purdue, 4 straight losses now. It appears that Braden Smith, who has carried such a heavy load over the course of this year, is starting to get a little bit worn down. No fault of his own. This is a high usage rate and a guy who's now expected to not just lead, not just facilitate, but score with no Zach Edey. He did it phenomenally well for multiple months. It appears, Trent, now he's turning the ball over much more than he had earlier in the year. It appears this is starting to wear on him. He needs a little help. Trey Kaufman-Renn needs a little help. I know Fletcher Lawyer had 20 and was probably Purdue's best player in that game. They need that more consistently, and they need guys like Cox and Colvin and First. Otherwise, I'm not sure how you dig yourself out of this hole.
Yeah, 4 straight losses. I do think Purdue's going to be all right now, but it's not going to be easy for him. I think I would agree, Rick. I think Braden Smith is a bit worn down at this point, late February in the season. That's not surprising with the load that he's carried and how well he's played up to this point. He's going to need some more help. I think, though, with Purdue, it gets back to them defensively. They are not dictating anything. They're on their heels. They're kind of playing catch up. And when they're at their best, we saw that against Michigan at home. When they really get after guys, C.J. Cox is picking up full course. Harris is, Braden Smith's getting steals. I think they got to be more impactful on that end of the floor get some easy baskets, then the game's a bit easier offensively. Right now, it's tough sledding for them offensively. Brain Smith, so much focus is on him. Yes, he does need some help. It's good to see Miles Colvin knock down some shots. They're going to need more of that moving forward. But for me, it starts defensively. That's where you get some easy ones, make an impact on the game. Now offense is a bit easier.
Very different weeks for these teams. Purdue, much needed rest, and then they face UCLA at home on Friday. As for Indiana, probably have to go 2-0 this week because you have Penn State and then you have Washington, teams that you can't afford to lose to if you hope to get on the right side of the bubble by the time the Big Ten tournament rolls around. I wouldn't say that was a huge surprise just because it's a rivalry game. I was shocked by what happened in Madison because Wisconsin had a late lead. They're at home. They're a team that takes care of the ball. They knock down their free throws. Instead, Trent, we went completely off script. Wisconsin made a bunch of late mistakes. Oregon took advantage. TJ Bamba did a terrific job defensively in the second half and overtime on John Tonje, and the Ducks made just enough plays to go on the road and win. Were you as surprised by the last minute or two of regulation and overtime as I was?
Oh, there's no doubt, Rick. Why has Wisconsin been so good? Because their mature approach, their execution is phenomenal. They're the best in how they space the floor, how they move the ball, how they execute offensively, and they were just not very good at all. I mean, really poor in that regard, especially the second part of the second half and in overtime. I will say, though, Rick, you got to give a lot of credit to Oregon. They pressured them. They got after them. And I think that's when Oregon's at their best, especially with their depth, their quickness. They're playing 2 point guards in Shellstad and Bartholomew. Bamba, you mentioned, great job on Tonje in that second half. And I thought a guy like Kwame Evans played really well, 10 points, 9 rebounds. He's a versatile defender, and that's what you need against Wisconsin because those bigs are going to space the floor. So I thought defensively, they pushed Wisconsin to half court. That's not how Wisconsin wants to run their offense. And they did that. They generated some steals, and now Wisconsin on their heels, not playing their brand of basketball. So give Oregon a ton of credit. But, Wisconsin, if they just execute like they normally do down the stretch, I think they win that game. But that's a huge win for Oregon. They've won some easier ones, and to get a big win like that on the road speaks volumes, I think, to their potential heading into March.
And you didn't even mention Nate Biddle. I mean, all this guy does is produce points and rebounds. I know he may not look to be the prettiest big. He doesn't have a ton of speed. He doesn't have those great moves. He just scores. He just rebounds. He just makes the plays that Oregon needs to make in Shellstad, obviously, with that huge 3 late as well, as the Ducks pick up a massive road win, 77-73 in Madison. All right, plenty of men's hoops still to get to after the break. Mick Cronin enjoys a milestone win at UCLA, while the Rutgers offense just explodes at the expense of USC. Plus, Ashley Adamson joins us later in the show to preview the final week of the women's regular season. All that and more coming up here on Big Ten Today. What a special Sunday it was in Westwood. Not only did Mick Cronin pick up career win number 500, he did it on Bill Walton Day as UCLA honored one of the legendary Bruins of all time. Another legendary Bruin was there in attendance and spoke about Walton's legacy, not just as a player, but also as a pundit.
I think because of his gift of gab and his love of the game, anybody interested in the game was interested in what he had to say and how he felt about things. Plus, he had a sense of humor, and that's essential for an announcer. And everybody liked his announcing. Was knowledgeable and insightful, and people like to have the inside look at what's happening on the court. So I think that really put him in a great position to be an announcer and have people share his joy of the game with the other people who enjoy the game.
Rejoined by Trent Meacham. And Trent, the younger generations do know Bill Walton only as an announcer, but some of the older folks, myself included, remember how good he was as a player for me in the NBA, and for guys older than me, how dominant he was in college.
Yeah, I've seen some highlights, Rick, and I know he was one of the most dominant players ever. Probably would have been one of the better NBA players ever if it wasn't for some injuries. But yeah, a legend in the game of basketball, and one of the bigger voices that we've had in the game. And it's pretty cool. You have a school like UCLA join the Big Ten, and you got Kareem there giving courtside interviews, and some legends. We welcome them to the Big Ten, no doubt. So what a way to honor Bill Walton, and with the win there this weekend.
And not just a win, but Mick Cronin's 500th career win. Of course, post-game, Mick tried to play it down, saying this is not about 500, it was about 32. That's the only number that mattered. But there are other numbers that do matter. This is the 11th Big Ten win of the year already for UCLA. They're in position to potentially get a double bye. They're in position for a really solid seed in the NCAA tournament. And this team was a little bit of a question mark coming into this year. Weren't sure how this rebuilt roster would work together. You've seen the emergence of guys like Adai Mara. And I think the one thing keeping it all together is Mick Cronin. You can say what you want, Trent, about his on-court antics. He can get a little bit fiery, get into his players, get into the officials, even into the media sometimes. At the end of the day, this guy can coach.
I'm glad you went to Coach Cronin. And I wasn't too sure what he was doing 6 weeks ago or so, but I think he is the reason. He's got some shades of Tom Izzo in him, and he's a big reason why I believe in this UCLA ball club. They're tough, they're deep, and he's going to coach him up. You feel like he's brought him along this season to peak at the right time. That's what Tom Izzo has done for so long in East Lansing. And Mick Cronin, he's got some shades of Izzo in him, and it's paying off right now. I think this team they got great depth. The guard play has picked up in terms of their scoring. Adai Mara, who you mentioned, I'm a big fan of Mara. 10 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks. Played a lot of minutes. I believe 14 minutes that second half. He was a real difference maker. Eric Daly, effective. He had 20 and 8. So this is a balanced ball club offensively. When they get good scoring from that backcourt, Sky Clark's a guy, 13 points last night. I don't believe they've lost a game when he's been in double figures. So they get consistency from a player like him. Sebastian Mack, he's kind of been a go-to guy down the stretch. This is a really tough ball club to beat because they're going to bring it defensively. They hold Ohio State to 61 points, 31% from the field, 22% from three. Man, give Mick Cronin a ton of credit because this is a good ball club. And I would say he is the reason, Rick, he's kept them together and has them peaking at the right time now. Yeah,
it really is the depth. Tyler Bilodeau, another guy that can do it. Hasn't been really consistent, but can be a really tough matchup. Kobe Johnson, a glue guy. I'm not so sure that anybody wants to play UCLA in a one-and-done situation because they can really just make it nasty for you for 40 minutes in those type of games. As for the other West Coast team, USC traveled to Jersey to take on Rutgers, a Rutgers team, Trent, that we've known under Steve Peichel has always been predicated on defense. Of course, in the past, he didn't have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, and they scored as many points against USC as they have since joining the Big Ten in a regulation conference game, 95, and Dylan Harper has been so much fun to watch. I guess the only sad thing for us, right, is we're probably going to watch him for 1 year in college. That's how good this young man is.
Yeah, I'll start real quick, Rick, with the defense. They did have 10 steals that helped them to generate 26 fast break points, so they outscored USC 26-13, doubled them up in transition. I thought that was really important, but gosh, Rick, Dylan Harper, he was brilliant. And you saw the full display, 25 points, 9 rebounds, or 9 assists, 6 steals. So him doing on both ends of the floor, at his size, at his strength, at his speed, at his skill. I mean, he has everything you want in an NBA level point guard. And at the young age, as a freshman, doing it on the Big Ten level, I mean, every time he steps on the court, he's a problem. So this is a team that's not had a great season. But I tell you what, they had 5 guys in double figures. Both those freshmen are healthy now together for the first time just about this season. And I think to finish this year, they go at Michigan, they go at Purdue, they got Minnesota at home. This is not going to be an easy team to get, especially they get in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, that stage, I think that's just setting up success, I think, for those freshmen. So I'm really looking forward to see how they finish off this campaign, and they're not going to be an easy out for anybody.
Yeah, Harper, Bailey, you add guys like Lathan Somerville and Tyson Acuff. When they all have games, good games together, we saw what we saw offensively from Rutgers. And I do think still you're going to get back to that Steve Peichel DNA. When you get to the Big Ten tournament, right now, they look like they're in a very good spot to secure a tournament bid, despite the fact that their schedule is pretty tough. You turn that defense back on when you get down to Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. You throw in Dylan Harper, you throw in Ace Bailey. Never know what can happen. All right, guess what? It's time for Old Man Meacham's Power Nap. I'm sorry, Trent. I had to do it to you. I had to do it to you one more time. We'll get to Trent Meacham's nap in just a second. Hey, Trent, I do want to talk about Illinois because it's your alma mater. They had a chance against Duke, but that chance went away in about, I don't know, maybe 3.5 minutes of game time. Listen, it's a tough matchup for anybody. Cooper Flagg's going to be the #1 pick. This Duke team is really well-rounded. What did you take away from Illinois and what ultimately ended up being, Trent, sadly, the worst loss in program history?
Can I go take that nap? Okay.
No, not yet. Not yet. I know you wanted to, which is why I teased it, but I was told we had to talk at least a little bit about Duke, Illinois.
First off, Duke is really good. You know, they're very good. They're very talented. They got great length at every position. So they're great. But that game was embarrassing for Illinois to lay an egg like that. And now 3 straight losses with an average of 26 points. Differential in those losses, that's not where you want to find yourself here in late February. They have time to right this ship. You know, they got Iowa coming up, then they go at Michigan, Purdue to finish up. So it's going to be a tough finish here. They really need this one at home against Iowa, but right now, you know, they still love the 3 ball. They just absolutely love it. They're 0 for 16 at halftime. I think they're like 15 for 18 from 2. And the IQ, the understanding of time, possession, flow of the game, you know, it is not there, and that's concerning at this point in the season. I love the 3 as well, but get the ball in the paint first. Let's get some paint touches. I love to see Ivisic on that low block more so than picking and popping. I think Kylan Boswell's got to be more of a playmaker when he can be a bully of a guard when he gets in the paint, making plays. So I think those are 2 guys they could use a bit more offensively. Will Riley's come on. Kasparis didn't have a bad game. I thought he did some good things there, but offensively, the chemistry and the IQ is not there. So they got to get that fixed right away. And then defensively, you got to have some fight. You got to have some pride. And I watched Luke Goody for Indiana really be a leader and a competitor for him. And I thought, gosh, that's a guy that Illinois could use. They need somebody to make shots, to be in the right position, and to really bring a competitive spirit. They didn't have that Saturday night, so I know Brad Underwood's going to get after them in practice. They got 3 big games to finish this season, so we'll see how they respond.
Trent, I asked Jordan Taylor this question after the game on Saturday night. If you're Brad Underwood, how much do you look at that film? How much do you just kind of throw it away and burn it? Because I think that there's a reason to do either, depending on how you want the team to respond.
I heard you ask that question. Great question. I heard Jordan's response, and I'm going to agree with Jordan. I think you got to address it. Now, you got to move on quick, but I think you got to look at it, and there's got to be a couple things that you can take away. And for me, the 2 things would be, you know, the shot quality on offense. You got to get better shot. Yes, I want my guys confident, but there's a difference between taking a step in 3 after the ball's been on the inside versus jacking up the first open just by the slimmest margin, just jacking it up. That's a big difference. Shot quality on offense and defensive pride. That's got to be there. Let's lock up. Let's lock in defensively. Be stingier. Take pride in getting stops on those 2 ends of the floor. I'd focus on those 2 things if I'm coach. Watch the film, and then let's move forward. We got some big games coming up.
And the good news, not a conference game. Doesn't hurt you in the standings, maybe hurts you in the NCAA tournament seeding, but doesn't affect where you would be in Indianapolis. Of course, Illinois has some work to do over the next couple of weeks to try to continue to climb up that ladder. Trent, now you can go take that power nap. And while you recover, Ashley Adamson will join the show to help us recap the weekend in women's hoops, including hard-fought wins for each of the league's West Coast powers. We're back on Big Ten today with a look at the women's basketball scoreboard. Pretty much all chalk as the favorites take care of business, though the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, USC, UCLA, taken into the 4th quarter. USC pulled away from Illinois, but UCLA needed final minute drama to knock off Iowa. That, of course, game was in Iowa City. Quality road win. No such issues for Ohio State, number 8 team in the country, absolutely rolling. And a big win for Michigan State as the Spartans knock off a really dangerous Indiana team. Thrilled to welcome in Ashley Adamson, who will host our Big Ten women's tournament coverage next week from Indianapolis. Ash, I know you're out on the West Coast. I'm curious as to the vibe and the excitement, especially surrounding USC and UCLA teams that I think pretty much everybody expect not just to be in the mix for the Big Ten tournament title, but to be in the mix for the NCAA Final Four.
Yeah, Rick, I think obviously the vibe in LA is always good, but right now it's as good as ever when you're talking about women's basketball. And I just think we'll get into some of these games and these teams specifically. But I think when you consider that with a week left in the regular season, that the regular season crown in the Big Ten is going to belong in LA. It is either going to be USC or UCLA, and it's likely going to come down to that game on Sunday that I'm sure we'll be talking about over the next week. But it's fun, it's exciting, and what's cool about this conference right now is I do think that there are so many teams that can make a run in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and of course it could be a split title if each team ends up with the same number of losses and they split those 2 games, which is a possibility heading here into the final week. And it's a possibility because USC got a little bit of a push from Illinois. It's a very dangerous Illinois team. They're top 25 heading into that game against USC. But like pretty much every other team that faces USC, when Juju Watkins and Kiki Ariafen get going at the same time, there just aren't very many teams in the country, maybe none, Ash, that can really deal with that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, Juju and Kiki, I think they are reminding everybody that they are the best duo in college basketball right now. Lindsey Gottlieb said it, and I agree. It's the 9th game that they both went for 20 or more. And USC, they're the hottest team in the Big Ten as we head into the final week here of the regular season. They've won 6 in a row. 4 of those wins were against top 25 teams. And I just feel like they have all the ingredients to win, obviously not just a Big Ten championship, but a national championship as well. And, you know, when you score 21 points off of turnovers and you show some mettle after Illinois went on a run, took the lead in the 3rd quarter. So they're finding different ways to win. And I think you can tell they're not satisfied. I loved Juju's post-game interview. Our friend Elise Woodward was giving her a bunch of credit for the way they played defense against the Illini. And Juju kind of dismissed it. She was like, yeah, Coach B, who's Beth Burns, our defensive coach, is going to disagree with you. So that's why I think USC is in such a good position. They're a team that has confidence in who they are. They've proven they can win big games in a lot of different ways. And they still have that edge because they know that there's another level for them to get to.
I'm so fired up. I'm headed down to the women's tournament as well on the Friday when USC will certainly be playing. I've never seen Juju in person. I've only had the chance to watch her on TV. And when you watch her play, she just looks a little bit different than everybody else on the floor. Can't wait to see that in person. Someone else who looks a little bit different, Ashley, than everybody else on the floor is Lauren Betts. And that's strictly because of her size. I mean, you just don't have very many teams in the country that can match up with a 6'7" big that has the skill set that Betts has. And obviously she's the star of this UCLA team, but I think even more so than USC, this is such a well-rounded team, and we saw late that it doesn't just have to be Betts or Rice. You have Arnasalo, you have London Jones, you have Jaquez, you have so many different pieces, and I think that's what makes Corey Close's team so dangerous.
You know, when you have 9 McDonald's All-Americans on your roster, like you're going to have depth. There is no question the talent on Corey Close's team is remarkable. But you know, Rick, we've seen talented teams before in any sport, and it's about playing together and playing with each other and for each other at the right time of the year. I know it's still February, but that game against Iowa, that felt like something that we're going to get used to seeing in March. 10 ties, 4 lead changes, no team led by more than 4 in the 4th quarter. And I was just impressed with how the Bruins responded. They were down 12 on the road. And I go back to Corey Close's comments after the Bruins beat Illinois last week. She kind of called out her team a little bit. She said she wasn't seeing the passion and the focus that they need this time of year. So it was interesting to see how they came out against the Hawkeyes. And it wasn't so much as how they started that game as how they finished. And a lot of different players, you just alluded to a bunch of them, got big buckets down the stretch. I could talk about Lauren Betts all day. I mean, 22 and 12 in this game. She shot 75% from the field. The rest of the team shot 33%. So her impact remains massive. If she's healthy, if she's in there, the Bruins can beat anybody in the country. And I think it's all about surviving and winning games this time of year. And that was an important win for a team that's got its sights set on a regular season championship, a Big Ten tournament championship, and a national championship as well, Rick.
Yeah, quickly, Ashley, the coaches at USC and UCLA, I mean, Lindsey Gottlieb is, I wouldn't even call her a rising star anymore. She's just a star. And Corey Close just continues to churn out season after season. I'm just not so sure. You can go to any level of basketball, men's, women's, anywhere. Show me a city where there are two coaches within a couple of miles of each other that are better than those two coaches have been over the years.
The way they recruit talent, the way they put those pieces together. And again, you think about Lindsey Gottlieb's experience in the NBA. She took Cal to a Final Four. And Corey Close has just won big games and had sustained excellence in Westwood for many, many years. She's never had a team this talented, though, and I feel like everybody feels like this is the year that they could really, really do something special. But I'm with you. LA is the place to be right now if you're a coach or a player, it feels like.
I know those teams will be in the double bye train next week in Indianapolis. Other teams jockeying for that position, like Michigan State, really important home game against Indiana. An Indiana team that when it shoots the ball well with Yarden Garzone and Sidney Parrish can beat just about anybody. But Robin Fralick has really put her thumbprint on this program over the last couple of years. They'll get out quickly. They'll run you to death. They have a ton of talent. I don't think we can really overstate how important this win was for the Spartans.
Yeah, I'm with you. This was a critical game, and both teams came in with that same 9-7 league record. Indiana has been playing really well, coming off that huge win over Ohio State, so they had some confidence. And then I feel like for the Spartans, this was just an opportunity to get right after those two losses against the LA schools. They won the way they know how to win, Rick, which was their, suffocating defensive pressure, which is just unbelievable to watch. The only stat you really need to know probably from that game is that they had 24 points off of 18 IU turnovers. So I think about Michigan State. You look ahead, they go to Ohio State, they host Minnesota to close out the season. They're projected, as a 5 seed right now in the NCAA tournament, but they will have an opportunity to potentially, depending on what they can do down the stretch here and in Indy, move up to the 4 line, which would be huge because as we all know, that would mean that they would get to host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. So I don't think anyone is sleeping on the Spartans, and they certainly shouldn't be because they've got a ton of good players, and they do the thing that every good team that wins in March does, which is play suffocating defense.
And whether it's Theron Halleck, Julia Ayrault, they do have a lot of different players that Robin Fralick can rely on. I still think Indiana, very dangerous team, especially down in Indianapolis at Gainbridge. If the fans show up, if they get the right matchup, talk about great coaches. I mean, Terry Moore has just built an absolute powerhouse in Bloomington. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Indiana made some type of run.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned it. I mean, they win games when they shoot the 3 well, and they have a lot of players who can get hot from deep. It was not their day from long range, and you can credit the Spartans' perimeter defense. But, when you go 6 of 22 from beyond the arc, those shots aren't falling. You're turning the ball over. It's hard to overcome those things. But IU, they've got Maryland and they've got Purdue left. And those last 2 games are critical because right now they're the 9 seed, which means if the season ended today, they would get a bye in the Big Ten tournament. And it may be worth reminding everybody, I know we're going to look at the standings, but in this new tournament format, seeds 10 through 15 play in the first round, 5 through 9 get a bye, and then the top 4, of course, get that coveted double bye. So IU is right there. And when they are hitting those outside shots, they can beat anybody too. That's what's going to make this tournament so fun, Rick.
Well, but we have a week to play first. We'll get to the tournament in a second.
I know.
You did mention that Michigan State has a chance to ascend, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally because of its schedule. That schedule includes Ohio State, an Ohio State team that just absolutely throttled Purdue as expected. But when you look at Ohio State, you look at the youngster in Jelani Cambridge, and she is so dangerous. Cody McMahon can do so many different things. I mean, Kevin McGuff has led this program to deep NCAA tournament runs. I think Ohio State nationally, for some reason, Ash, continues to be a team that the nation, not the Big Ten, but outside the Big Ten, I think there's a lot of sleep on Ohio State, more than there should be.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. And that's probably fine for Kevin McGuff. He'd probably like it that way. But this felt like, Purdue caught a Buckeyes team that was looking to blow off some steam. They'd gone 2-5 in their last 5 games. And maybe this is why some of the, national media or people outside aren't paying as much attention, because in that 2-5 stretch, those 2 wins that they had were in overtime after they blew significant fourth quarter leads. So to come out and get a 52-point win, which is, I think, their 3rd largest conference win in program history, you put up 98 points. This felt like a statement by Ohio State. And some of the numbers on offense, 14 made threes, 21 assists. Their defense did what it does. They forced 21 turnovers. They had 12 steals. And I am sure that Kevin McGuff was happy to have this one sort of wrapped up, given what the last few weeks have been like. But Jelani Cambridge, that is a name that a lot more people around the country are going to know, not just in Big Ten country moving forward.
All right, you teased it. The Big Ten tournament does not start today, but if it were to start today, the first ever 15-team tournament would set up like this in the bracket. You'd have Washington, Minnesota, Northwestern, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa as your first-round matchups. Now, we should clarify the league has not decided what to do yet with the two games that Northwestern opted not to play, one against USC, one against UCLA. Wildcats didn't travel out west, citing concerns about the wildfire. We don't know if those will be non-contests or if those will be forfeits. It could affect who gets in. It will not affect likely what you see there in the quarterfinals and the second round, as those teams feel fairly comfortable about their standing and getting in to Indianapolis and perhaps not playing until the second round. Ashley, I know you'll be hosting all the coverage down there, and I know we're still some 10 days away before it gets started. What's your initial thought about going down there for this first ever tournament that includes the West Coast teams, and the first ever tournament that we'll see extended with an additional day or an additional game on that first day with 15 teams involved?
Rick, I know that we're not supposed to ever admit what our favorite things are as objective professional broadcasters, but
we'll allow it.
Women's conference tournaments are my favorite. I was able to cover, 12 of them in the Pac-12, and they're just really special. I think the level of play, and now that I get to, cover those four same teams and have learned and been able to watch so many different styles of play, so many incredible players, so many incredible coaches, to have 15 teams in Indianapolis getting together, I could not be more excited. I think it's interesting that with less than a week left, nobody has technically been eliminated from the tournament yet. There are still scenarios where 3 conference wins will get you in, and every team can mathematically still get to that point. So hope, we know, is a very powerful thing, especially this time of year. But I just want to circle back to what we started with. When you talk about the top of the league, I think that winning the regular season championship in a league that may send 12 or 13 teams to the NCAA tournament is one of the most impressive and significant feats. That sustained consistency that is required to do that is really special. And in their first year in this league, it's going to be either UCLA or USC, or perhaps a shared crown, that they're going to win the Big Ten. And I think when you look at all the adjustments to a new, far more rigorous travel schedule, different styles of play, different arenas, I just think it's pretty amazing that the regular season title is going to be in LA. And I love the fact that it is likely all going to come down to that rivalry game on Sunday at Pauley. That is assuming, obviously, that UCLA can handle Wisconsin on Wednesday. And I think we're smarter than to assume anything this time of year, Rick. But I could not be more excited to get to Indy. I'll put it that way.
I'll give you that credit. I would not give myself that credit for being quite that smart. I do assume a couple of things. I also assume we're going to have a great Big Ten tournament. Great analysis, Ash. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Rick. Great talking to you.
All right, gets back to take a peek at the current Big Ten tournament bracket. This is set up as the standings shake out right now. See the 6 teams that would be involved in the first round games on March 12th. And then you fast forward to the quarterfinals, where the top 4 seeds earn the double bye. Those top 4 seeds would be in order: Michigan State, Michigan, Maryland, and Wisconsin. Of course, 13 days still to go here in the Big Ten regular season. We are rejoined by Trent Meacham. You saw Minnesota on there as a 13 seed. They would play in the opening round game. Penn State not part of the bracket right now, Trent, but they did get closer with a win over Minnesota over the weekend. Been a really tough year for Mike Rhodes' team. They've been beat up. They've dealt with some really tough losses, injuries to important players. We saw over the weekend what they can be when they're whole, and what Yannick Koenen-Niederhauser specifically can do when he's healthy.
Yes, 2 straight wins for Penn State, so don't count them out in terms of getting into the Big Ten tournament. And Rick, you mentioned Yannick, big Yannick, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks. I think he's a guy we'll see playing in the NBA. And imagine what he was doing last year at Northern Illinois, which wasn't much, but at 7 feet tall, he's a big-time athlete. Reminds me of JaVale McGee. He was the best player on the court. Was great both defensively in protecting the paint, protecting the rim. cleaning up things, and then offensively, such a lob threat. We're seeing him expand his game. He was big time. Ace Baldwin leading the way with 10 points, 7 assists, kind of setting things up. So their defense was great, as we've come to know Penn State and Mike Rhodes. But then when you have Yannick Konen-Niederhauser producing like that offensively, that's what makes this team really tough. And they got some tough games to finish up: Indiana, Maryland, Wisconsin, but they're not going to be easy out by any means.
Yeah, Indiana up next. Maybe the wrong time to catch the Hoosiers, who know that they certainly need a win. Speaking of needing a win, and speaking of teams that have dealt with injury and adversity all year long, Iowa certainly fits that bill, but found a way against Washington. What's your take right now on the Hawkeyes?
Well, when they played their brand of basketball, and they've had some different guys step in there. You think of Bronze and different guys, give them a lot of credit who hadn't played much before. But their brand of basketball, they make 10 for 21 from threes. They're getting out in transition. They get to the free throw line, make 23 for 26. So good shooting team and good passing team. 15 assists, 7 turnovers. And then the critical thing, which is so hard for them to do, is rebounding. They out-rebounded Washington by 1. If they can be competitive on the boards, which is hard with their lack of size and athleticism and even in girth as well. But if they can do that, I mean, offensively, Peyton Sanford playing at a really high level. He's got 27. Josh Dix, 15 points. Those two guys, they can get off on you offensively. Brock Harding, I thought, was effective as well, getting into the paint. He had 11 points, 5 assists. But rebounding so crucial for them. And then they can space the floor. They're knocking down shots. They're playing their game. And they dictated the terms of that. When they're doing that, they're hard for anybody to handle.
No question about it. Everybody can play the what-if game, but if they had Owen Freeman, obviously it would be a very different story in the second half of the season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Still, they pick up the 85-79 win over Washington. Time for one final break here on Big Ten Today. We'll take you around the league next for a look at how Iowa wrestling took down Oklahoma State and why UCLA's star power in women's gymnastics continues to shine. Time for us to take you around the Big Ten. We start in Iowa City. What a Sunday night inside Carver. Iowa, number 3 in the country, over second-ranked Oklahoma State. The highlight, true freshman Angelo Ferrari at 184 pounds, taken down Dustin Plott to help the Hawkeyes knock off the Cowboys for a 5th consecutive duel. Earlier in the night, Nebraska all over Purdue. Great performances from Christopher Minto, Brock Hardy, Ridge Lovett, and the rest of the Huskers. Nebraska will be a tough out in the Big Tens in a couple of weeks and a team to watch at the NCAAs. UCLA gymnastics holds off Michigan on the road on Sunday. Jordan Childs was terrific on the floor. UCLA able to get the win despite the fact that Michigan started this meet with its highest rotation score of the season on the vault. UCLA baseball off to a great start. The Bruins now 6-1 on the season after a come-from-behind 15-9 win over Michigan State. This week, it's a 2-game series at home against Arizona State. Maryland men's lacrosse continues to roll. The Terps go on the road and pick up a 13-9 win over number 5 Princeton. Up next this weekend on Saturday against number 1 Notre Dame down in Atlanta as part of the Atlanta Lacrosse Showcase. That will be a rematch of the 2024 National Championship game won by the Fighting Irish. And this news shared on Monday morning, Nebraska will not just be part of the AVCA First Serve Showcase, but the Huskers will also host 6 matches at Pinnacle Bank Arena from August 22nd through the 24th. Nebraska will play Pitt and Stanford in Lincoln. Also as part of the First Serve Showcase in Sioux Falls, Penn State, and Minnesota, part of that event as well. A couple minutes left on the show to talk about Monday's standalone Big Ten men's game with Trent Meacham. Trent, I mentioned this at the top of the show. It's Michigan on the road to face Nebraska. About 10 days ago, Nebraska felt great about its NCAA tournament chances, now clearly hovering around that bubble. This is an opportunity for the Huskers to pick up a quality win, but also a chance for Michigan to get back on track after that loss to MSU.
Yes, Rick, a massive game for both teams. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how Michigan handles Nebraska's defense. So Nebraska really likes to shrink the floor. I mean, they'll bring almost 5 guys to the strong side of the floor. They'll probably trap Vlad Golden in the post. You know, they're going to heavy help on Danny Wolf. How does Michigan handle that defense, sharing the ball, moving the ball around the court without turning it over is what's so important for Michigan. We talked earlier in the show about Trey Donaldson at the point. How is his game? Can he elevate his game to play? And then for Nebraska, coming off a disappointing loss at Penn State, also a disappointing start to the game against Northwestern. They got to play a 40-minute game to beat Michigan. And Juwan Gary's a crucial guy for me. He's been playing really well, but did not have a good game against Penn State. He's going to be matched up against Danny Wolf. That matchup defensively, making it tough for him, and also attacking Danny Wolf on the offensive end, making him play is going to be so important. So I think just the contrasting styles of play is going to be really interesting tonight. And then finally, can Michigan, when Nebraska goes on a run, and they handle that run, they're in a tough road environment.
Yeah, last chance for Nebraska to pick up what's considered a major quality win because their schedule in March, Minnesota, Ohio State, Iowa. This would be a huge feather in the cap for Fred Hoiberg and the Huskers. That'll do it for Big Ten Today. Thanks for being with us.